Hello, Brandon. How are you, mate?
Doing great, brother. Thank you for having me.
It's all good, man. It's all good. I'm excited to speak to you. I'm looking forward to the fights tonight, but obviously we're not going to cover that too much because we're already going to have the results out there by the time this is out. Just one thing, what is your prediction for that fight?
I think the smart money is on Habib, but I'm rooting for Gaethje. I like both fighters. I think it's going to be a really exciting fight. And to be honest, I haven't been this excited for a fight in a while. So I'm
Yeah.
ready to go. It's weird here because it's 11 a.m. start, so we're talking and it's 7 a.m. in the morning. I'm interested how that is going to work with the fights being earlier. So yeah, but I'm excited.
Yeah, me too. It hasn't felt like this sort of big fight sort of vibe, I think, since the last time Sugar fought against Cheeto with the main event, DC and Stipe.
Yeah, that was a cool fight as well. But obviously didn't get the result we wanted, but
No.
it's still cool to be a part of that for sure.
Yeah, that was a massive fight. And obviously with you, you're Suga Sean O'Malley's strength and conditioning coach. You do a lot of work with him for like mobility work and like his fitness and stuff like that. How do you find working with Sugar?
I love it. He's just a really really amazing athlete with an amazing mindset, and so it's a really cool experience to be a part of his team and to be a friend and just to see his growth and be around him and the team is really really cool.
Mm-hmm. And we were speaking a little bit before we went live about like the sort of mindset, and Sugar has that mindset of like he's going to focus not just on his MMA career, but his sort of all round well-being of his life. And you're the same way. You do the same things and like practice the same sort of things. How long have you you and Sean been in the same sort of wavelength and known that you're sort of the same way?
So myself, I'm older, so I'm 40, and I've been practicing, mindfulness and these things for a while. Really, since college is when I was first exposed to it, and I was kind of a funny story. I went not funny story, but I went through a little bit of a depression in college. So I was an athlete growing up, and then I found myself at a big university, and I was no longer an athlete. And I think a lot of people go through this, whether we're trying to figure out who we are. And I actually discovered one of Bruce Lee's books, and that changed my life. At that point in my life, I was probably 18, 19 years old, and then I started to read all of his books, which are more philosophy. And looking at it now, it's really just a Zen mindset, more of a Zen Eastern Buddhism mindset. So I have been practicing mindfulness and meditation for a while. And Sean, I would say Sean has as well. Maybe for him it's 5 years, and he just keeps expanding on that and growing with that as well. So it's really cool to connect because I don't feel like I have to teach him. It's more we have conversations that are centered around these concepts. And to be honest, he adds to my awareness of these things and understanding of these things, and we both just are able to contribute to that experience. And his Tim, his head coach, really everyone in his camp is all really just after growth, which is cool to be a part of.
Yeah, definitely. Because like obviously there's a saying that like you surround yourself with the people that you want to be like, basically. So if you've got that around you, you're never going to stray away from that sort of mindset and mindfulness of being aware of what you're putting into your body and stuff like that. So it is great to have that not just himself and like you say, you and Tim around him, but he's got the whole people around him that are backing him up and always pushing him, and not just pushing him, pushing themselves.
Right.
Yeah. So obviously in Sugar's last fight, it obviously didn't go his way, as everyone knows, and there was a bit of controversy in it. Obviously you was in his corner that fight, and before the fight actually happened, he was saying that I think his ankle wrap was a bit tight backstage.
Yeah.
What was actually going on with that? Was it just like the ankle wrap was too tight, or did you have a chance to adjust it at all?
Yeah, I mean, he's had obviously the issues with his feet, and he's had some ankle stuff in the past. So he had the foot surgery. I don't even remember. Maybe it was a few years ago, and
Yeah,
that's
got
kind of a nasty surgery. You know, your feet are tough because you're on them all the time. And an MMA athlete is bouncing. His style is very bouncy, is very fluid. So he wears the wraps and the brace, and every fight you get a different guy that's going to wrap that. So there's different styles. So that fight, the wrap was a little tight, and he had mentioned it to me. So prior to the fight, I actually was trying to loosen it up, get my fingers in there, and give him a little bit of space. Who knows if that contributed to the nerve? Um, it's possible, right? Because if you get, if you're restricting blood flow, that could have something to do with that. I don't necessarily know, but his wrap was a little bit too tight, and we were trying to loosen it up prior to the fight.
mm. Obviously, with Sugar having prior injuries to his foot, was there anything like you was doing after that first injury to like sort of strengthen his ankles or legs or feet as you would, or
Yeah, there's a big piece of our really when we started to get into it was just developing base level stability in his feet and his lower body up the chain up into his hips because he's one of those guys which you see a lot that I describe like I kind of look at guys. I try to bucket guys. Like you have gorillas and you have kangaroos. Okay, it's a very simple analogy, but they're two different types of athletes that generate power and strength differently, right? Sugar's definitely a kangaroo.
mm-hmm.
Very springy, very explosive, but he tends to use passive structure for stability. And is my dog too loud right now? Can you
No,
hear
no,
her
he's
barking?
good. I could
Oh,
hear a bit, but he's
okay.
fine.
Okay.
He's fine.
So, so like that analogy when we first started working is we need to build some just structure. We need to teach you how to get strong because part of why I think he was getting injured, like the hip stuff and some of it, is just because he's so explosive and so elastic, but there wasn't any stability backing it up. So the suspension was really a blessing because I mean like you're in this in the sport like if you don't get a long enough time to really execute a plan, it's hard to make progress. Like you're chunking away, but
Mm-hmm.
change is hard. So you get 12 weeks to execute a plan and you can make something happen. You get a year. So we worked a lot on just base stability, uh, getting him stronger over his feet, over his legs, over his hips for sure.
Yeah, yeah. He is very explosive, and obviously he does a lot of feints in his fights, and that can
Yeah.
also cause like sometimes it's a weird movement to do a feint and pull a shot, isn't it? So it's like sometimes that can even cause a muscle to act weird, or do you know what I mean?
Yeah. 100%.
Is there anything that like you do specifically to like help with feints and stuff like that, like for the training and like mobility sort of side of it?
Um, I mean, a little bit, right? We definitely work on um, like reactive strength. So I call it like stimulus response. So for me, you get you get change of direction, which is where you're training when somebody knows where they're going to go. So an athlete, it's maybe it's a power move and it's a left to right as explosive as possible. But change of direction is something that the athlete they know what they're getting themselves into, right? So they just have to organize themselves that way. The stimulus response is a similar type of drill, but the athlete doesn't know. So it could be you randomly call a direction, you drop an object, or they have to be really quick and be able to change their position.
Mm-hmm.
We do a lot of that. So I like to do that on can be a part of the warm up, can be a trainable piece. It also can be on a off day, which I tend to call a regeneration day when we're not loading. Um, and I think that itself helps with that fainting. But I also like to separate. Like I think sometimes strength coaches, I think we make it too hard on ourselves, and it's like get the guy really good at the simple stuff, and then let his MMA come from MMA, right? Like if you're doing too much MMA movements in the gym, I potentially think you might be not taking advantage of your time, right? So I think that's a mistake that people make in training, is let's make it sport specific when the sport is the specific part, right?
Yeah, that makes sense, because obviously there's a lot of different movements you can do to strengthen yourself in an MMA situation that aren't actually what you would do in an MMA situation. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
And obviously going back to the Suga and Marlon Vera fight, how was it for you being in the corner? And like, obviously leading up to the fight, it was all fine and everything, but if you had a chance to actually like say anything to Suga, if he managed to get back to the corner, if he couldn't make it because he didn't make out the round, what would you have said to him? Because obviously I don't know what sort of, how big of a part of your game is to speak to Sean in between the rounds, sort of thing.
Yeah, it's not. I'm really there.
Yeah.
I'm there more at that point of getting into a fight. My voice needs to be quiet because I'm not an expert in MMA. Now I might talk to him and cue him about breathing or something that him and I have an intimate relationship with if he needs to calm down, but he's really good at that. So it wouldn't be my place. I would sit back and let Taquinho or Tim, and if they need me, that's why I'm there. So I think, yeah, and I think if he does make it out of that first round, what I'm thinking is if he can't stand on his foot, probably he's trying to get the fight to the ground. But yeah, that wouldn't be my place to give that instruction.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, it's a difficult situation for anyone really that's got to give him instructions, because what do you really say to a fighter that can't use a leg, that's down one leg? It's hard.
Yeah, and especially him. His style is so in and out, and like you said, feints. Yeah, that's tough. But I mean, being there, he still, even after that happened, there was a couple exchanges where he was close. Like he wasn't able to drive off that leg at all, but he knew it, and he went after a couple of things that I think if he connects, who knows. So yeah, it's just tough. It's just part of the game. It's such a weird thing because guys get kicked so much, and you really only see that you've only seen that happen a handful of times. Like to my knowledge, like Michael Chandler, it happened to, same type of thing, and I don't know anybody else. I'm sure it has happened. But
Henry Cejudo happened to, didn't it, as well, against Marlon Vera, I think it was.
Yeah.
Not Marlon Vera, sorry. I can't remember his name now. Marlon Moraes.
Yeah. So yeah, that nerve gets hit, and then the foot goes dead. It's weird.
Yeah, it is a very weird thing, especially like obviously listening to a scientist explain it, or someone that knows the human body. It's like that is one of the parts of the body where that nerve is not protected by anything really. It's literally uncovered to just hit. But would you really go into a fight and say, I'm gonna go there and win this fight by kicking someone in the leg, or the back of the leg, and hit their nerve so their foot doesn't work? Does that happen?
Right. Yeah, and you think about how many thousands of kicks athletes take, and it doesn't happen. So I mean, it almost looked like when you watch it, and I talked to Sean, it almost looks like his toe like dug in to that spot and hit the nerve. Like it just was. It wasn't. I mean, it was a good kick. I wouldn't say it wasn't a crazy powerful kick. It just hit him in the right spot. So
yeah, definitely. And like you were saying, it looks like his toe sort of wrapped around the back of his leg, because normally when you throw a kick, you want to hit with the shin, so it's the hardest it can be. But hey ho. So is there anything that you've worked with Suga now, like after this injury? What have you done to sort of strengthen his ankles and stuff like that, if that's possible? Because the ankles are very hard to strengthen, aren't they?
Yeah, I mean, initially getting back, we had to give it a little bit of rest, and then we started to move on it. So just to start to slowly layer in volume, for stability. I think there's also a lot of benefit in just the like blood flow and movement after you have an injury like that. As long as you're safe, that you're not going to make things worse. So we've started to, and we've been doing, layering in different landing mechanics, single leg landing, single leg loading, and then starting to progress it out. So there's eccentric emphasis, isometric, emphasis, and then more concentric strength base, where we have, there is progressive overload, if you will, into those tissues. I think there's still tons of room for him to get stronger, which is really cool. I tell him this. I feel like we've really turned a corner too with him, and it's like we're still just scratching the surface, which is really cool. Like he's getting stronger and has better control over his body in the gym, like every week. And we've made a significant jump recently, and I'm just like, look, man, you still haven't even scratched the surface of this. We just have to keep attacking it smart. And there's a plan in place. There's a vision of getting him stronger without increasing his mass, and definitely not taking away from his natural springiness. Right? There's this. He needs to get stronger, but we want to make sure that he's also getting even more explosive and making those gains for sure.
Yeah, and obviously while also getting stronger, he also needs to keep the mobility and the flexibility that obviously a fighter needs.
Right. Yeah, for sure.
And one thing I wanted to talk to you about while we're on the subject of Suga is, like, a while back you took a few kicks from him, literally voluntarily. You just like stood there, took the kicks from him, and you're crazy for that. But what was the thinking? Why did you do it?
Well, it's funny because there's slow motion, so it looks a lot worse than it was, because he probably only kicked me at like 20%.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So, but you can still see, like, in slow motion, you see my body collapse. We were just messing around, man. We have a lot of fun, and that would have been, I think that would have been in between the Cheeto fight and the fight prior to that, where we're still in the middle of quarantine, and I'm in my backyard right now, and I have a gym, like, kind of a rack in my backyard. So Sean would come over to the house, and we would do our strength conditioning here, and so it's just kind of fun because we were just kind of playing around. But I do know I don't want to get kicked 100%. You definitely know.
Yeah, I can imagine, because even like the first kick, a roundhouse kick to the belly, and like you see the red mark on you. It's like, like when you did the next kick.
Yeah, it made me realize I need to work on my core more.
A weekly thing, then get kicks from Suga, yeah.
Yeah, just keep that strength and get that strong. Keep it,
yeah. So, is there any news for like the next time we're going to see Suga in the cage? Because I know he wants to fight again this year.
Yeah, I mean, I can't speak on it officially, but I think there's a good chance there'll be something lined up for the end of the year or the start of the year. He's healthy. We're still making sure that we're working on that stuff to get him really good, and I know he's excited to get back in there, because he was frustrated with that, understandably. Like, and when he was saying this stuff, like, he feels like he didn't lose. I mean, you gotta like, he's a competitor, right? And I get why the media is always going to throw things and misconstrue things, but that's just him being a competitor. The first round before that happened, which wasn't a lot of time, to me, he looked like he was going to pick him apart. He looked faster. Now, Cheeto is tough, but who knows? And obviously I believe in Sean, but just being there cage side, to me, if his ankle doesn't get, or if his leg doesn't happen, he picks him apart.
Yeah, for me, watching it, it looked like Suga was like gonna eventually do the same as all the other fights, but it did look like to me that it was going to take a little bit longer to get that knockout that he wanted, or because, like you say, Vera is tough.
Yeah, and to his credit too, he was being really patient. So I'm sure that was a strategy. I'm sure that was, I would imagine that was part of his game plan, was to feel Sean out and try to get a sense of his speed and just his movement. I mean, the thing is with Sean is he's quick, he's fast. Like, he gets in there, and the fights that I've been to, and I've watched all those fights. So, but being there, guys get hit, and all of a sudden it's like, oh shit, like this kid's got some pop. So you see things shift. But again, that's what makes the sport so fun. Is, you know, it's just it's a really cool chess match, if you will.
Yeah, it definitely is. And obviously, you're not just a man that is involved with MMA. You're involved with other sports as well. The ones that I know of are like golf and baseball. Is there any more that you're involved with?
So I've worked with. So I own a gym here in Arizona, in Scottsdale, and we have Gin Pop. We have a decent amount of golfers, professional golfers. I've got a good amount of baseball guys. Right now, one of my really good friends and clients, AJ Pollock, he plays for the Dodgers, so he's in a World Series, which is really cool. I've had some NFL guys, and yeah, so a lot of different sports. I mean, for me, it's like we're humans first, so that layer has to be addressed first, or it should be, and then at that point, you start to understand really the outcomes that you're looking for to enhance the athlete, right? So it's like it's a cool puzzle, if you will. It's to understand, okay, here's the individual, and there's this human layer that we need to address first. How well they breathe, how will they move, right? And then it's, okay, what's the vision? Where are we trying to get this person to help them be successful in their sport? And although there are similar pathways to that place, it's different depending on the person. Because, like I said, you could have 10 MMA athletes that are all human, obviously, but once you address the fundamentals and the principles, then that pathway changes depending on what they need to be successful. So
yeah, it's a great way to put it. It's like, it's so much easier to understand when you break it down like that.
Yeah.
Like, not just saying, oh yeah, I do this with someone that does golf because they do golf. You're saying, like, this human has the human features that we have, so we need to sort of fix their mobility, the way they breathe, the way they, like, all this stuff, and then you can sort of break down what they need for their sport. So it's a great way to look at that.
Yeah, it's fun. I really enjoy it because I just think the body is so dynamic, it's so complex, and you'll never have it figured out.
No one's got all the answers.
No, and hopefully in a year, and in 2 years, and 5 years, I will be thinking very different. I'll have new answers, and that's the mindset that I always try to embrace. Is I'm going to do the best job I can currently for everyone, but I want to make sure that I keep learning, because it's just keep pushing it forward. So.
And what would you say is your, like, favorite sport? Obviously, it's probably hard for you to choose a favorite sport to, like, person to work with, or so on like that. But what personally, outside of working with people, what's your favorite sport to, like, watch and enjoy?
I love MMA now. I played baseball growing up, and I still enjoy baseball, but MMA is just really cool to be a part of, right? It's the puzzle is different. The mindset of the athlete slightly different, although I think at the top, you see guys, girls that are competing at the highest level of their sport have a lot of similarities. Even golf to MMA, it's completely different, but the mindset isn't. So really, for me, it's more about the person or the athlete that I'm working with, and their acceptance of being coached. Like, that to me is what is the most beautiful piece, is somebody that will just trust the process and want to be coached, right? There's nothing worse than somebody that's like comes in to get help, and they're like, they're asking you for your expertise, and they want to give you the answers, right?
Yeah.
So for me, it's if I get somebody that is coachable, wants to be coached, wants to grow, and I don't care who it is.
Yeah. So when you're like, if you look at a situation like Justin Gaethje, for example, like in his when he went against Poirier and Alvarez, he lost the 2 fights and he was fighting the same way and stuff. And he sort of, obviously he was being coached because he's a fighter, he's coaching it. He's like learning and always evolving and stuff. But after them 2 losses, he sort of said to his coach, Trevor Whitman, like, I want to be a champion, like, make me a champion. That's sort of that mindset where he's opened his mind now. He's going to let Trevor Whitman take control of him, and he's going to listen to every word he says. When you look at a situation like that, do you get like does that like warm you in a certain way?
For sure. Yeah. I think it just shows you, and you look at where he's at and the positive changes.
Mm-hmm.
That's really, really cool. For him to, I don't want to, I mean, at some level drop his ego, but I think fighters have to have ego, right? We all do to a certain degree. It's how we manage it. But to just trust his coach, trust the vision that they have, I think is really, really cool. He said something about, I watched all the embeddeds, and I don't know which one it was. They were talking about like his weight cut and his diet, and just how even that, like, he's starting to get better at that, right? It's like just like you or I want to perfect our craft, the athlete should embrace the same thing, right? When you embrace growth, it changes your existence, right? Because now every day, I think, is this opportunity to get better, and it makes life less stagnant. And I think we need that as humans, but I think a lot of people, unfortunately, just get trapped in this mundane routine and they're not growing at something. I think this is why people fall in love with jiu-jitsu, and why you have, an office worker that never competed that goes to jiu-jitsu and gives it a chance, and just, right? Because it's really quick. You'll realize, man, I need to go back to learn more, and I'm going to keep growing. It's an aspect of us as humans that we need for happiness, but a lot of people don't connect those dots.
Yeah, like you're like, just talking to you now is connecting the dots in my head, like with what you just said about jiu-jitsu. It is exactly what you said. You go there and like you always know that you need to learn more, because otherwise that next person's going to be better than you, and then so on and so on. And it is like you can never know everything, and especially in jiu-jitsu, you could go there one day and then roll with one person and think you're amazing, but then the person next to you is going to destroy you.
Right.
Yeah, I love jiu-jitsu. It's amazing.
Yeah.
So obviously with the mobility of like side of it that you work with, how do you like sort of determine between having strength and mobility? How do you sort of balance that?
So I think currently, I think I think breathing affects posture, and posture affects breathing. It's a cycle that can go both ways. And just like breathing affects our state, and our state affects our breathing. And when you also realize that, so okay, breathing affects posture and posture affects breathing. So the position that somebody's in will also dictate tightness, looseness, right? Because muscles and tendons attached to our skeleton, and how we breathe affects our skeleton, our posture. So I think now, if you can get somebody in a better position, you can attack strength without having to spend a lot of time training mobility. Because a squat becomes a mobility exercise if you're in the right position. So that's not to say that flexibility and mobility are pieces that I work with. I just think a priority shifts towards strength, power, whatever, right? Whatever the athlete needs. And if you can put somebody in a good position when executing that movement, you're not going to restrict their mobility. You're probably going to pick some up, and now your time is better spent. So yeah, it's there was a period in my career, in my life, when I did a lot more specific mobility training, and I still do, but I do less of it because I understand the breathing piece more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, because obviously a big thing with like breathing, like yoga, when you learn to do yoga properly, a lot of it is to do with the proper position of your skeleton, and then also the breathing technique that you use. So that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, your like your diaphragm is a big piece of that. You know, your pelvic floor and your thoracic diaphragm, they got to work together. And if you're in a super extended or super flex posture, whatever it is, they can't fully work. And then you're going to have stability gaps, and those stability gaps will affect how you execute a movement. So again, it comes back to somebody's position, their posture. But it's, if you can get somebody in a good position and kind of stack their skeleton, then you tend to see less restrictions in movement, and then things start to work a lot better.
So like in mobility, is there like one thing you could say to someone like to do every day is going to help them, sort of thing, with like flexibility and stuff like that?
Again, it probably come back to breathing.
Yeah.
Come back to, so there's breathing for the mental state, and there's breathing for position, and I think you need both, and they cross over. But if somebody understands how to orient their pelvis and how to drive air, I think that's something you can do every day that then will benefit really all aspects of somebody's life. So then I'd say, spinal movement, control, segmentation of the spine, like fluidity in the spine, because you need rigidity in certain aspects. You need fluidity. There's a balance there in the spine, and then the hips. So keeping the hips loose, keeping the spine mobile but also strong, I think are things that people should do every day.
Yeah. And like I was saying before, I was doing one of your breathing techniques and breathing exercises that you put up on Instagram. And like for me personally, I've got asthma, so it's like sometimes I do have struggles with breath and stuff like that. And since I've been started doing that, it's been like I can hold my breath a lot longer and like do stuff like that. And it's really helped, like especially when working out, I feel a lot stronger, not just like breathing wise, but I actually feel stronger.
Yeah, it's awesome. Love it, man. Yeah. It's breathing is, it's probably just because it's become one of my main focuses for maybe about 2 years, and I've read a lot. It's really powerful. It's more powerful than I think most of us know, and maybe anybody does, but how it can influence our life. And nasal breathing is a huge piece. Like that would be a place I'd start with everybody, is just start nasal breathing slow. Mm-hmm. Can you breathe, can you increase the duration of your inhales and your exhale all through your nose? And if somebody commits to just that probably will create a significant change where they want to continue to go down that path.
Mm-hmm. And one thing I wanted to talk to you about when we're on the subject of breathing, have you heard of the magician David Blaine?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Did you see his recent stunt, if you can call it a stunt?
So I watched the interview on Joe Rogan, which was prior to that, and I haven't. So this is the balloon one.
Yeah. I
haven't gone and watched it, and I it's one of these things that I mentally kept saying I want to go to YouTube and watch it, but I haven't. I mean, it's crazy, right?
Yeah.
Like listening to that podcast and watching that. I mean, you see his emphasis on breathing. I just was like fascinated with how this guy, like he's mastered so many things, mm-hmm. right? The amount I found myself thinking like he must, when he wants to learn something, he must just become obsessive with it, practice it for thousands of hours, and then it's really cool. It's really impressive.
Yeah, it's amazing. You should definitely give it a watch, because like when I was watching some of your stuff, it like some of the breathing techniques reminded me of what he was doing. Like I don't want to spoil it for you, but when he got up like so far, he had to do like what he calls it is like purging his oxygen. So like when he got up so far, I think it was like 22,000 feet or something like that. He like started doing that, and it's like he could actually breathe. He had like I can't remember what it's called, but the thing that reads like the oxygen levels. He had that on, and he was like, it was dropping down to so much, and then he was purging his breath, and it just went like shooting up, and then down, and did it again, shot up. Yeah,
that pulse oximeter reading his O2 saturation. Yeah, It's cool, man. There's a completely different discipline, and you look at how breath is super powerful for him. Like I think he held his breath for, at one point like 15 minutes or something ridiculous like that, and they're cold. So yeah, it's cool.
Yeah, it is crazy, and obviously a lot of that is to do with your mindset as well, and how like you can control yourself from not just like saying I'm gonna die, I need to breathe.
Yeah. It's a powerful thing. Yeah.
And obviously like that you can probably take that sort of principle into a fight, where you can think in a fight, oh, I'm tired, so you're going to make yourself tired. Like, do you think that's sort of a thing in a fight?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, again, coming back to your mind and body are connected. We know that. And your breathing will affect your state and vice versa. So your state meaning like your emotional state. So if you're thinking something like that, your breath is probably going to speed up. You're going to shift more sympathetic, and that's going to tax you. Like it's fatiguing. It's cool in the sport to see. There's definitely a significant shift where you see guys talking about their breathing, right? Talking about nasal breathing, talking about, you see just guys are calmer now, right? You're starting to see that side of the sport, which I'm fascinated with, where guys are buying into that and the levels are just increasing, where it's not, it used to be, again, 15 years ago, it was just the more of a beast guy, like, come out in some Metallica and you right? You don't see that as much anymore. There are some guys that operate better, and I think every guy's a little bit different. Some guys do better when they're a little bit more hyped up. But I would say the majority of fighters, you see them operating a little bit smoother now, right? They're aware of that. So they're flowing. They're connecting their mind and body, and I think the breath is that bridge. Your breathing is the gateway to connect your mind and body. And that's not just in sport, that's in like the average human. So, I think about it like this. It's like most of us, we live up in our headspace. Like we're constantly judging ourselves. We're constantly like creating these scenarios that we're creating our own reality, right? And that's not real. That's the story we create. When you bring your awareness to your breath and you simply feel the air come in and come out, and you can, like, I'm a visual person, so I visualize my diaphragm working. You're getting your mind out of that space and you're pulling it into your body. So you're connecting your mind and body. Like that makes sense to me. So, and if that's where flow exists, right, where we're not thinking and we're just doing, it makes sense to me why an MMA athlete that, like, maybe it's the most like reactive sport there is, why that makes sense for somebody to be better at that, where they're not thinking about, oh shit, what happens if I get knocked out, or my fans aren't going to like me anymore, or whatever. They're just in the moment, right? I mean, there's nothing good that happens from overthinking about the negative things that could potentially happen. Nothing. So
Yeah, definitely. The negative thoughts just creep into your mind and make you do things that you shouldn't do. Whereas if you, like you say, just take your time to just put yourself back into your body, relax, be present, and then you're not going to be thinking all these different things. And then also you're going to be a lot calmer, go into the cage and perform as you have trained or want to perform, sort of thing. It's like Tyson Fury as well. He's like one of the fighters that I've always looked at, and like, he's calm in the changing rooms, on the walk to the cage, in the fight, after the cage, not the cage, sorry, the ring. And he's just like, he's always calm. And I think he's probably got something to do with like his breathing as well. He's always like, he never sweats basically.
yeah, it's cool. He's fun to watch.
Yeah, I love watching him. He's amazing. He reminds me a lot like Suga, because obviously Suga, he's got a lot of feints in his game, and then he's like, I don't know how many fighters you can say that walk to the cage and before they're going to fight someone, they just like they love the attention. They stand there. Sean's like that every time, and it's like gives you goosebumps. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just
Yeah,
seeing that he's in that mindset to be that calm.
yeah. That he's a special athlete. He really is. It like I said earlier, it's been cool just to be a part of his team because he has something that is really, really unique. And his belief in himself and probably really his how he embraces growth, I think is second to none. I really believe that. And he'll continue to get better at it, which is cool too. He's not content. You know, he's going to grow as a fighter. There's room for him to grow. He's gonna grow in the gym. He's gonna grow in his mindset, which is really cool to be a part of and to see.
Definitely. And before I let you go, one more question. What did you think of Sugar's hair when he was dyeing it all the different colours?
I love it, man. I
It's
mean,
cool.
it shows you. It shows you. Okay, I think he's another aspect that makes him great is he's authentic. So why does he have this huge following? I think it's because people see that. Like people pick up on fakeness and phoniness, and he is who he is. Like he's this kind of goofy. He has this crazy like there's like two sides to him. He's this savage like killer, and then he's this goofy, gamer, right? Like,
Hmm.
and they somehow like operate together, which is really cool. Like the fight, the Eddie fight where he knocked him out. We're back in the hotel room, and he just had this knockout of the year type performance, and you think about like such a cool experience, and just to see him, with his girlfriend, with his team, just being goofy, like he's a superstar, and he's going to continue to be. But there's just this genuine side of him that I love, and I remember just being there and just like admiring it. Like, man, this, like, I think if I was in that moment, hopefully now where I'm at 40, I would be able to deal with it. But at 25, I would have been like so caught up in, like, you're on Sports Center, you're getting blown up. Like
Hmm.
it would go to my head. But to see him, like, he obviously cares and he's very grateful for his fans, but he's very just humble with it, in the right way, right? Like, again, the fight game, you've got to sell yourself, and there's a bit of that fans want to see. So the hair, like, going back to this, like, that's who he is, but it also just creates attention that makes it that much more fun to watch and to be a part of.
Hmm.
So yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it definitely looks cool as well when someone like gets the KO of the year or whatever. I can't say that now because of a couple of weeks back, but an
Yeah.
amazing KO, and he's got like whatever colours in his hair: red, orange, yellow.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and you think about being okay with. I mean, I didn't even look. I don't look at stuff, but like I imagine that you either have people that loved it or people that hated it, and I'm sure there was a lot of hate.
Hmm.
But that brings attention. It brings attention to the sport. He, he's a marketable guy. Like, he gets that. He's smart. So he'll continue to be himself. He'll continue to do things like that are just going to separate him, and then he's going to perform. So I think he'll be world champion. I believe in him, and he's still so young. So it's exciting.
Yeah, that's the thing. He's very young for a MMA fighter, so he's got a lot of time left in this game. So, and this is how good he is now. So imagine in 5-10 years time.
Yeah. Yeah. That division is exciting, man. There's a lot of really good fighters. So it's cool. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's fun.
there's going to be a lot of good fights for Sugar in the future. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah.
So appreciate you giving me your time and coming on and having a chat.
Yeah, man. Appreciate your time, and I love what you're doing. I think I love it. It's cool to be able to connect. The podcast format is great because we get a chance to have a conversation, and hopefully people get a chance to hear it and grow from it themselves. So yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like I've learned something and grown just from talking to you myself. So That's good enough for me, to be honest.
Yeah, heck yeah, there you go.